Welcome ladies and gents, Chris Andre here. You can find me at BetBoxing on Twitter, or of course you can subscribe to the channel. Let's talk boxing. I want to talk about a theory that's emerged regarding George Kambosos and Devin Haney, and I want to give you an opposing viewpoint of it, because I've got a different viewpoint from the prevailing narrative. So I'm going to end up giving you the prevailing view, my view, then I want to hear your view, okay? So hear me out to the end, hear the way I set the argument. Maybe you agree with me, maybe you don't. I'm not adamant about this. It's just a theory that I've got. But first and foremost, let me just say this. Massive props to both guys. You know, in the press conference, they were talking about who was forced to take the fight. You know, George Kambosos was saying you were chosen. Devin Haney was saying, I wasn't chosen. You were forced to fight me. And Kambosos was saying, what are you talking about? You were told you have to accept Loma's offer. In other words, I'm the A side. You were told what to do and you followed because that's what you had to do. And Devin Haney was basically saying, well, yeah, I followed because I believe I can take the belts and things like that. The truth is they're both telling the truth. Devin Haney was chosen, wasn't he? I mean, George Kambosos didn't have to fight Devin Haney. This wasn't a mandatory situation. He could have continued to say, look, I'm the undisputed champ. From the first day he was asked, he was saying, look, whichever way you see it, I'm going to rectify the situation. This was happening from the time that he was going to fight Teofimo Lopez. I'm going to rectify the situation. I'm going to end up taking all the belts anyway. He could have said straight afterwards, listen, I'm the undisputed champ. The WBC themselves say that the franchise champ is the number one guy in the division. They have me as the undisputed champ. I'm the man. If he wanted to duck Devin Haney, right? He could have rolled with that. People would have countered that and said, no, if it doesn't have mandatories as an obligation, we can't take the belt seriously and so on and so forth. But if he wanted to duck, there's his narrative. I'm the main man. I don't need to fight Devin Haney. Bear in mind that Eddie Hearn had said that he was also entitled to a homecoming fight in Australia. So what he could have also done is taken a gimme fight for a much lesser fighter in Australia as a homecoming, delayed then trying to fight a guy like Devin Haney, and by doing so, you know that Haney's massive at the weight. He could have drawn out the process, made Haney wait another year, which would have made it even harder for him to continue to make the weight, and fought him at a weakened moment. Or perhaps Haney wouldn't have been able to make the weight anymore, would have ended up moving up, vacating the belt, and then Kambosos could have gone for whoever then had the belt. If he wanted to duck Haney, that could have been the route he would have gone down. Alternatively, Devin Haney didn't have to go to Australia. He had already made excuse. I was supporting Devin Haney's potential excuse, not as an excuse as in he didn't want the fight. It was a legitimate excuse. If he did not want to undergo that medical intervention that is demanded by that nation, then you can't demand that an athlete does that. So it would have been easy for Devin Haney to say, listen, I ain't going to Australia, right? End of story. End of. But no. Kambosos chose him. Initially, he went to him. They didn't like the offer that they got, so he moved to Lomachenko. When Lomachenko went to war, he came back, he went to Devin Haney. He didn't have to do that. He did choose Haney because he's choosing to pursue legacy. On the other hand, Devin Haney could have found an excuse. He didn't have to go down this route. So you have to give props to both guys. They're fantastic for doing what they're doing. Brilliant advert for the sport. Brilliant for both guys. Now, one of the prevailing narratives, what I actually want to talk about here, is I've seen the Devin Haney fans are very bullish. They feel that Haney's going to win the fight. The George Kambosos fans are very bullish. They feel that he's going to win the fight. But there's quite a growing minority, I'd say, of Haney fans who I've been seeing online saying that they don't believe that Haney is going to get the decision. They feel as though Haney's only chance of winning is by knockout. And because he's not a knockout artist, that he's not going to get the decision. He's not going to manage it and he's going to get robbed. And the reason they say this is because they feel that it's in Australia, hometown decision. And it's not just Haney fans. You've got a guy like G-Man, for instance, who obviously knows his stuff. And he was saying in a recent video that he feels that everything that Kambosos is going to do, the crowd are going to roar. Now, he does lean towards Devin Haney to win the fight. But the point is that every little thing that he does, even when he's grazing Devin Haney, the crowd are going to roar. So as a result of that, Haney's up against it in terms of winning over the judges. That it's going to be a tough ask. I actually see it as the other way around. I actually think if Kambosos is going to win the fight on points, he has to win it big. He has to win the fight big. And let me explain my thought process behind this. You know, I was having a debate with a few people about this online, and one of them was Maxim. You can find him at MaximB2022. And he was basically saying that he believes that they're trying to make Haney feel secure, this is Top Rank, because they're planning to rob him. And a few other people have said this too. They feel that you know, they want Haney out of the way in a sense. Let Kambosos win the fight, goes on to fight Vasyl Lomachenko, and that way if Lomachenko then beats Kambosos, you get Top Rank with all the belts again. But here's why I believe that that's a short-sighted viewpoint. I actually believe the Machiavellian approach, and we know Bob can be Machiavellian, right, would be to ensure that they try and steal Devin Haney as a signing and make him win the fight. You see, you have to understand, Devin Haney is a free agent. Devin Haney is up for grabs, essentially. I read a quote online. I don't know how true this quote is because I haven't seen the interview itself. But I read a quote that Eddie Hearn said something along the lines of, it's all right that he's gone over to Top Rank. Let Devin Haney go and win the belts and then he'll only come back to us anyway. Because he has faith in the way that they've treated him and their relationship together. And he gave Canelo as an example. Canelo went to fight on the PBC. He took Plant's belt. Then he came back to us. So that's his viewpoint. But here's the thing. If Top Rank look at Devin Haney and say, this is a potential superstar, a star of the future, there's a gap in the market, the American market, we could turn this kid into a star. DAZN have already invested quite a lot in the hope of turning him into a star in the future. We could deal with them a blow by stealing him away. Let's offer him more money than DAZN are offering him. In a close fight against Kambosos, if we make sure he gets the decision. Now, this is just a Machiavellian, cynical perspective. I'm not accusing Top Rank or Bob Arum of doing anything like this, right? I just want to make that clear before, I don't want any legal proceedings. We're just talking, as if we're talking cynically. We're toying with ideas here. But a cynic would say that Top Rank might look at that and say, listen, if we look after him in a couple of fights that he fights, he's going to trust us. They've got my best interests at heart. They're also willing now to pay me a lot of money. Maybe it's better for me to go with Top Rank, especially because if that third fight is on ESPN, imagine another close fight and Devin Haney was to get the nod again against Lomachenko. Well, now all of a sudden you're starting to look at this and think, wow, man, I was in two really big fights and they looked after me. Now, why would they look after him instead of Lomachenko? Because a lot of people are saying, we're talking about they've got Loma's back. You have to understand that Lomachenko is 18 months away, that fight. Minimum. He's going to be 36 years old by the time that fight comes around. Even if Loma was to beat Devin Haney, what's the upside financially for the future? There isn't one. It would be short-sighted from a sheer Machiavellian business perspective to prefer Lomachenko than Devin Haney to win the fight if you're able to sign Haney. So if they both belong to Top Rank would rather the future wins the fight than the guy who's the present but has a limited future. The other thing you also know about Lomachenko fans is that they really believe in their guy. And even if he was to lose to Devin Haney, if he then wanted to carry on fighting because he still wanted to achieve that undisputed dream and Devin Haney was to then move up and vacate the belts, you know that Lomachenko is still going to draw a crowd. He lost to Salido, still drew a crowd. He lost to Teofimo Lopez, his fans are still there, hardcore, right? Whereas if Devin Haney was to lose against Lomachenko or George Kambosos, maybe he doesn't quite have that long-term fan base that's going to stick with him. He'd have to rebuild. He'd have to re-establish himself and rebuild to be a future again, to be a star of the future again. So again, from a sheer business perspective, if you end up signing both Haney and Lomachenko, it suits you better, not just for the future, but for the fact that you've got two assets with a lot of value rather than one. Okay. Now, when it comes to, in other words, money is one real big incentive here. Now, when it comes to the question of what is more influential when it comes to winning over the judges, to influencing the judges, what is more powerful? Is it the money and the potentially more powerful promoter you might have on your side? Or is it a hometown advantage? Well, I'm going to give you an analogy which is extreme because Devin Haney is not Canelo Alvarez. But let's say Canelo Alvarez does come to London next year and he was to fight John Ryder or Buatsi, as a lot of the talk is, right? If that's a really close fight, who do you think gets the decision? Is it going to be the hometown fighter in Ryder or Buatsi? Or is it going to be the superstar in Canelo? In other words, is it the guy with the upside financially or the hometown advantage? When Adrian Broner, because I know a lot of people are going to say, yeah, but Canelo's an individual and an anomaly, just a star that you can't compare to anyone else. When Adrian Broner fought Paulie Malignaggi, that fight happened at the Barclays Center in New York. That was in Paulie Malignaggi's hometown. That was a very close fight. I personally had Paulie winning the fight 7-5, but it was a pick 'em. It could have gone either way. It was Adrian Broner that got the decision. It was the star of the show. They were both stars, but Adrian Broner was the one that at the time people were putting on the pound for pound list, a potential future star, the new Floyd Mayweather, something that a lot of people are calling Devin Haney now, and Devin Haney's tapping into that, by the way. He did tweet, he did say when he signed the fight, that before Floyd became Money Mayweather, first he had to be Pretty Boy. In other words, that's why he's accepting a lower bid than what he feels is worth, because now he's going through that Pretty Boy stage before he becomes Money Mayweather. So he too is going down the sort of route that Broner was, this idea of the new Floyd, the new superstar, the new cash cow, right? So Broner got the nod over the hometown fighter because that's where the upside was financially. Now, bear in mind, I know Kambosos has fought on top-ranked cards, but he's not a top-ranked fighter. He's a Ludabella fighter. So if Kambosos wins, what does Bob Arum really gain? Apart from the fact that it would definitely be easy to make the Lomachenko fight. But because they've signed Haney to a guaranteed third fight on ESPN, if that fight is to occur, he'd likely fight Lomachenko, that third fight. If he was to win the 2 fights, he'd likely then fight Lomachenko. If he can't and he moves up, he could end up fighting Teofimo Lopez. So Top Rank have pretty much got him sealed now for 3 fights. And if they look after him in those 3 fights, well, then you've all of a sudden potentially got a superstar that signs for you exclusively. You see what I'm saying? If you start to look at this from a more Machiavellian perspective, it doesn't suit the big, powerful promoter for Kambosos to win the fight. What it suits for him is for Haney to win the fight in the hope that he can sign him up permanently. And even if he can't sign him up permanently, you can cross that bridge when you come to it. Because by the time that third fight occurs, if Devin Haney is not willing to sign with you and play ball, he hasn't been impressed by you sufficiently, well then who knows? Maybe then in a close fight, Devin Haney doesn't get the decision. You see what I'm saying? Now, like I said, I'm not accusing Bob Arum of doing any of these things. I'm sure he's an upstanding citizen, right? I'll leave that for you guys to decide. We're just talking theoretically here. From a Machiavellian perspective, if the boss of a mafia family, one of the 5 families in New York, was still running boxing, and they were to decide how this would play out, that would be the more logical move. Devin Haney getting the result against George Kambosos, regardless of where it is. Let me know what you think. Hopefully, whatever happens, we see a very fair fight, a fair outcome. Whatever the case might be, I'm the sort of guy you guys know here on this channel. I'm very clear about the method I use in which to score fights. My process is consistent. And so as a result of that, because I tell you guys how I score a fight in terms of what I'm looking for, you know that here you're going to get an honest answer regardless of how it goes, whether I have to go against the public narrative or not. So let me know what you think about everything that we've discussed. Let me know how you think the judging will play out. Not necessarily how the fight will play out. We've got a long time to talk about that. We're going to do a really detailed technical breakdown. Personally, I think, just to tell you immediately before I get to that point, this is a fight that can go either way. There's one key technical battle. The winner of that particular element of the fight, I believe, is going to go on to win the fight. Whoever wins this specific battle, I believe is going to go on to win the fight. But I'm not going to tell you what that is until the breakdown. So that will come closer to fight week. But let me know what you think, guys, about everything we've discussed. Thanks for watching. Take care. God bless.